What's up, YouTube? TCM here, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about my journey into the ethical hacking space. And everybody's journey is a little bit different. I wanted to share my path and some of the things that I did and what I would do differently now in 2023 than I did 6+ years ago when I was getting into this field. So we're going to take a quick word from our sponsor. As always, if you like this video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Shout out to our sponsor for this video, Snyk, who is running yet another Fetch the Flag CTF. This time they're running it with John Hammond, and he's got this awesome little Bitmoji from Snyk. Snyk, how do I get one of these? This is really cool. Anyway, this Fetch the Flag CTF is going to be a 24-hour event, and it's going to start on October 27th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you mark your calendars. It's 100% free, and it's made by John Hammond, so you know it's going to be quality. So there's going to be a handful of challenges here. There are 30+ challenges. It's going to have web, binary exploitation, and so much more. And really, this is for beginners all the way up to advanced. You can be at any skill level to participate in this, and they've got really cool prizes too. So all the top 3 winning teams are going to get a Nintendo Switch and, of course, bragging rights. And if you're new to CTF, what I really like is that Snyk runs a workshop. So on October 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, they're going to run a CTF 101 workshop that's going to teach you how to solve these challenges. You can get live support from experts, and you're going to be ready to compete on game day. Now, registration for this event is super simple. All you have to do is come and fill out this form at the bottom of the page, which I will link you to, and it is snyk.co/TCM. You fill out your information. If you're interested in that CTF 101 workshop, you're a beginner, you want to just see how these things work, just check this box, very straightforward. Come down here, hit submit, and you will be registered for the event. Very straightforward, very easy. Look how long that took. So all you have to do is go to snyk.co/TCM and get registered. Okay, so I won't dive too much into my backstory, but I will say that I was working as an accountant before I ever got into the field of IT. And as an accountant, one day I just went and turned in my badge, my company card, my keys, everything. I walked out at lunch, never to look back. I got a U-Haul, broke my lease, and moved to a completely different city with the intentions of doing something other than being an accountant. And so I got to this new city. I didn't know what job I was going to do. And I just started with, hey, I'll probably drive for Uber, just make some extra cash while I have some downtime to figure this out. And so I put in my Uber application, didn't really think anything about it. And I just started racking my brain about what could I do? What do I want to do? What am I passionate about? And everything kept pointing back to IT. And a lot of it kept pointing back to, I want to work in IT. I don't really know what specifically I want to do, but maybe a help desk is a good place to start. And just a little bit of background to this background is when I was a kid, I've been using a computer since I was 4 years old. I was on Prodigy before AOL. If you understood that reference, good job to you. You're part of the old people group nowadays. And so I was on Prodigy. I learned to start coding and programming really young. My mom was taking community college classes when I was a kid. I remember going through her HTML books. I understood and learned Visual Basic 6, so I could write chatbots and other things for AOL. And there was some hacking involved back then, back in the day as well. And it's just like, hey, this tinkerer mindset. How can I break things? How can I write code? How can I just learn to do things? And that kind of translates over to the realm of IT and cybersecurity especially. So I thought about that and how I've been using a computer for a long time. I was 24 at this point. And so, hey, I've been using computers for a long time. I really want to get into maybe the IT field. And I think I could do some basic troubleshooting because I've had to do it for myself. So I went out there and I started looking for jobs in the area, and I applied for a bunch of jobs. And the job that I ended up getting, I specifically remember almost not applying. I applied for the job, but during the application process, it's like, hey, you need 3 years of experience and you need an A+, Net Plus, Security Plus certification, all these different things that I just didn't have. So I remember literally I got frustrated. I was going to click the X on the application. For some reason, I didn't. I applied and I ended up getting called for an interview. That was the only place I got called for an interview, by the way. And I remember in this interview, they were asking for $50,000. And I said, look, I'm not the most qualified person for this job. I'll take less money to be able to prove to you that I'm willing to put in the effort. And if I don't know it, I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to ask Google. I'm not afraid to figure things out on my own. And they really liked that. I was honest up front, and either they were going to like me for me or they weren't, and they decided that they did. So I got the job. It was for an MSP, which is a managed service provider. And if you don't know what that means that they have a bunch of clients. So some jobs, like help desk jobs, can be internal to an organization, like you're just working for that organization. And for an MSP, you have lots of organizations. So I got to see Windows environments, Mac, Linux, all different kinds of things. And it was a great learning experience for me because I had only used really Windows up until this point. So when I got onto the job, I remember vividly, it was a few months into the role, and I was with a coworker in the office, and he was reading something. He was like, hey, do you know that there's a certification out there called Certified Ethical Hacker? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, man, you can go get paid to be a hacker. And up until this point, I just assumed that hackers were bad people wearing the hoodies. And even this misconception still goes on to this day. I got a comment literally yesterday on YouTube, and this happens all the time, where this person was going off about, hey, hackers are bad people. There's no such thing as ethical. You cannot be an ethical hacker. You're committing a crime, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's a lot of still education to go around. I feel like the education is a lot more there than it used to be, and more people know what an ethical hacker or penetration tester is through job titles, regulations, whatever it might be, compliance standards, than they did back when I was trying to go through this in 2016, late 2016 timeframe. So I heard about this, and immediately that night I went and started doing my research. And we'll call this due diligence. We'll talk about this later, but I did my due diligence. I went to Reddit, I went out to different blogs, curated things, and just said, what do I need to learn in order to be successful in this field? What does this job entail? What can I do? Will I like it? Those sorts of things. So what I learned quickly was you need IT experience, so help desk experience. You need networking experience. And I say experience lightly. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have work experience. We'll talk about that in a second too. But you need networking knowledge. You need some security knowledge, programming knowledge, Linux knowledge. And that's just to be able to start learning how to hack. So I took all that and I compiled a list of this journey. And I remember posting to Reddit and saying, this is my journey. If you go look, you may be able to do some OSINT and find it. But I said, hey, this is what I laid out. I'm going to go do the following certifications. I'm going to get my A+, and I did. My Net Plus, my Security Plus, I did that. My Linux Plus, did it. Okay, and then I'm going to get my CEH and my OSCP, and I'm going to be good. And I did all those things. I sprinkled some more certifications in there, and we're going to talk about that too. So I went on this path to learn what I could in order to be successful in the hacking field. And there are some things with these certifications in this path that I would absolutely do differently nowadays. So when it came to the A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, I thought it was fantastic training. The A+ literally did prepare me for the role. I was already working in the role, but it made me better at being a help desk person. And there were things I learned directly in the A+ training that actually did correlate and translate over to the field, and I was better because of it. I am always thankful for getting the A+. Will never say anything bad about that certification. The Net Plus, also good. And the Net Plus was justifiable because I needed to learn networking. And for the organization, we only had, the MSP, I should say, we only had 1 or 2 network engineers. They called them network administrators, net admins for short. And so we had those people, but I wanted to become one of those. That seemed like the next logical step. And so yes, getting the Net Plus was good. Getting a Security Plus was good as well, because to the organization, I said, hey, we're not doing security very well. We were using domain admin passwords for literally every single client. So the same domain admin password, I should say. And with that, that means that if you compromise one domain admin on one client, you would compromise all of our clients within the organization. I bet you there are still MSPs out there doing today. I'm hoping that that's not the MSP that I worked for anymore. And so with all these certifications, and the justification across the board, by the way, was that, hey, how do you get people to pay for this? How do you get companies to pay for these certifications? I grew up very poor. I did not have money. I was not making nearly enough money to even pay for any of these. And so I had to do a little bit of sales. And with sales, you have to identify a pain point and justification for why something should go your way, right? So what's the pain point? For example, with the organization that I was with, the MSP, the pain point was we're not doing security very well. Or, hey, I could be a better help desk person, or I could be a better network administrator. I could help there. And if you let me go do the certification, I'll be better and I can assist you there. And so that's how you sell it. And same thing, I went and actually convinced the organization to do the Linux Plus and the CEH, because we took on a client that was Red Hat Linux only. And of course, with an MSP, they said, we could totally do this. We have people knowledgeable on staff. In reality, nobody was knowledgeable about Linux on staff, so I volunteered. I said, I already need to know Linux. I know that deep down inside, and I'm going to go do that. So, hey, send me for the certification. I'll study for it. I'll pass it, and I'll prove to you that I have the knowledge for this. So we did that. Same thing with the CEH. I went and got my CEH, and I said the same thing. Hey, I think we should have more security around here. We should learn about vulnerabilities within our environment and be able to fix those so that our clients are not vulnerable. So I went and got my CEH certification. It didn't take very long to realize that I did all these certifications and then was not utilized whatsoever for this role. So they ended up taking somebody higher up and saying, hey, go fix all the security problems, even though I went through all this training. So I was a little hurt by that. I started going out and saying, well, I know I don't want to be a help desk engineer forever anyway. I'm going to go maybe work in networking because networking is the next logical step for me to become a hacker. And by the way, you're going to hear my path, and then you're also going to hear other people's paths that they talk about this. There are some people out there that have what I call get off my lawn mentality, or I did this path, so you need to do this path as well. That is not true whatsoever with me, okay? I believe that your path is your path, and it's however you want to write this path. I enjoyed being a help desk person, going into networking, going into pen testing, and I would do that over again. I know people that have skipped all those jobs and went right into pen testing as their first IT or security job. Perfectly fine as well. It's a much more difficult battle, much more uphill battle, but is one that you could achieve as well. So don't ever let anybody tell you that you have to take a certain path. I've got videos on this ranting about it, so I'm not going to do it here. But just know that your path is your path, and it's what you make of it, and what certifications you get are ultimately up to you. So with that, I ended up going and applying for a network engineering role. I got a $30,000 pay raise with that role. So of course I took the job, ended up working for the government. And it was one of those jobs that, again, I was underqualified for. I feel like I've been underqualified for every job that I got hired for, and that's perfectly okay as well. So I applied for this role, and they wanted Cisco background. I really didn't have it. And I told them in the interview, like, I will go out there and I will get my CCNA and we'll get this done. And so one of the first things that I did, they sent me to CCNA boot camp. I went through the boot camp. I went and got my CCNA certification, and I started immediately learning Cisco networking and all the equipment so that I could utilize that. In the meantime, while I was working as a network engineer, back of my mind, I still knew I wanted to be a hacker. I told them, hey, I want to go get this OSCP certification. And the salesman came out again. We are the government. We are protecting very critical assets here, and we're not doing anything to maybe secure those assets. We're just putting what's in place. How are we testing that security? How do we know that it is good, right? And I remember specifically one time being on site doing some network engineering, and I spoke to the on-site CISO. And I told him, hey, you know, we have this Stuxnet that just went down, right? What's preventing that from happening at this location right now? And he's like, oh, you can't get a USB drive in here. You can't get anything through us. We've got guys with guns. So that was the US government solution, at least at that site, was we've got guys with guns. Don't worry about it. It's safe. And so I pitched it to my manager, like, this is not the right solution. We should probably be doing something a little bit more. And let me go get the certification. I will come in and help assess some of these networks and these devices and make sure that we are actually being safe. So that was the sales pitch. Throughout that as well, I went and got my OSCP, and we had a wireless project that I really can't talk about, but just know it was wireless related. And I said, hey, OSWP's out here. How about I go get that too? So they pay for that, and I went and got that and helped out at work, okay? And so it became time that I got this training, and I started realizing it's my time to move on. I'm done being a network engineer. I'm gonna go and be a hacker. So I started applying for these jobs with all these certifications that I've worked all this way up for, and realized that I'm getting beat up in these interviews. I do not know anything that I really need to know in order to be successful. So I eventually, through getting beat up, self-studying a little bit more, and going through all this, I landed a job. First month on the job, I was just thrown to the wolves. There was no training, no anything, just, hey, go in, get this done. And I thankfully was able to learn from my peers. There was somebody specifically, his name's Brad. We still work together. We founded a company together really recently, and he will be a lifelong friend to me. And he was somebody that took me under his wing at this job. And he said, look, I just started here 3 months ago. I got the same treatment, had the same background as you, was told to do all these things, and I wasn't ready. He's like, here's all the things that I've curated thus far about how to do these pen tests, how to do an external, how to do an internal, and what we didn't learn through our training. And I was like, that's great. It's unfortunate that I had to apply this training and this knowledge like on the job, on the fly. I would have rather have learned that before getting on to this role. But that was the way that it went down back then. It's just like you got the training that you got the gold stamp for your resume, and you went and tried to find a job, got a job, and you got on the job training. And so that's what I went through. That was my journey. And in terms of what I would change and how I would do things differently, we are in a world now where it is 2023 at the time of this recording, and there are so many more resources available out there than there were previously. And so I'm going to walk through some of those resources. I'm actually just going to link you to a blog in the description below that covers this way more detail than I could ever do in just this video, and talks through, hey, what's a free resource? What's the cheap resource? Where can I learn all the things I need to know? So I'll link that. Just look in the description below. Outside of that, what I want to share with you is, hey, if I went back and did it all over again, what would I do differently? I liked my path. I really liked being a network engineer. It was great for me. I loved being on help desk. I loved working for an MSP. Even when I became a pen tester, I worked in consulting, and I love that as well, because some people go into that internal environment again, and you're only testing against that internal environment. You're not testing against unique environments every time. So same thing with being a consultant or being a pen tester. I had the ability to go out and learn different things from different places. I highly recommend that at any point in your career, if you're going to work at a help desk or anything like that, try to work for a managed service provider. They don't have the greatest reputations, completely understand it. It's just a stepping stone most of the time. So don't feel too bad about like leaving, but just know that you're going to get way more experience doing that than you would likely get working internally. And that holds true for a lot of jobs. So with that out of the way, A+, Net Plus, Security Plus, all of those I found incredibly valuable, and they have industry recognition in the sense that they're recognized in government, they're recognized worldwide, and they allow you the ability to actually go and maybe get a job. Like a Security Plus could maybe land you a SOC analyst role, entry-level SOC analyst. A Network Plus can maybe land you a junior network job of some sort. And so you have those abilities. A+ can get you a help desk job. And I think they're incredibly valuable. Linux. Now, the Linux Plus was not worth it whatsoever. Having that on my resume never made an ounce of a difference. If you're going to go learn Linux, you can learn it through YouTube. There are curated courses out there. There's plenty of resources out there. You could totally do it for free. What I recommend, and what I've always preached about learning Linux, is similar to learning another language. There are resources out there like Duolingo or Babbel or something like that that you can go learn a new language. But unless you immerse yourself in the environment, you're only going to learn basic concepts. So same thing with Linux. You can go watch a video on it or take a course on it, but you need to make sure that you're immersing yourself in that environment. Just take a week off of your main operating system, spin up a virtual machine, and use that as your main computer. Do something a little bit different. Put yourself in that environment and struggle a little bit, and you're going to learn the best through that. So immerse yourself. If you're trying to learn Linux, learn it that way. You do not need a certification for that. When it comes to programming, I am to this day still a moderate programmer. I'm not great. I'm not terrible, but really not great. And if you are a programmer, you're interested in programming, it's a great field to get into. If you want to get into development or computer science, I think it's great. It has a lot of fallbacks. Like if you wanted to get into computer science, work in cybersecurity, and then decided you didn't like cybersecurity, you could always fall back and be a developer or do something else. Whereas if you get a cybersecurity degree and you go work in cybersecurity, guess what? You're stuck in cybersecurity. So I think when it comes to development and programming, you do not have to be a developer by any means. If you know how to read code that is sufficient, the better you are at programming, the better I think that you'll have, or better time that you'll have. But I have skated by for a long time. I know plenty of people that can't program worth anything, and they're amazing hackers. So your idea of it will vary. If you enjoy programming, by all means, go learn it. If you hate it, you detest it, do not want to learn it anymore, learn the basics, the foundations, and that should be sufficient enough to be successful in this field. So don't let anybody tell you you have to be a programmer, or don't let anybody tell you you don't need to learn programming. Just figure out what works best for you. Moving on, the CEH, and let me back and preface this really quick. Go back, preface this with, hey, I own a training company related to hacking. I own a training company that has certifications that compete with the following certifications we're going to talk about. This is my unbiased opinion. I will talk both positively and negatively where I can and what I feel. And I encourage you to get your own opinion on this, do your own research, due diligence. We'll talk about that again in just a little bit. So CEH, would not recommend that to anybody ever. It was a multiple choice exam. It was not, I don't know, I don't feel like I learned anything from the CEH that would have made me a hacker. I didn't learn any skills. I just learned a bunch of tools and switches, and that was it. And it was like, here's a question on a switch that you'll never use again in your life. You should memorize this. And it just felt like a brain dump to me. And I really didn't enjoy the exam. I never found any value of it. If you are somebody that is interested in the CEH, there are some pros there where if you're trying to work in government, it's still part of the 8570, though the 8570 is getting torn down and rebuilt. And then there's also, like other countries, some countries, the CEH is prominent in on-job applications. That is not really the case in the United States. I remember very specifically being laughed at in an interview for having the CEH because you're just sold this information and you believe it and it has a cool name, but in reality, it didn't do anything for me. The OSCP was valuable. I remember very specifically spending like 12 hours a day working through the labs and getting through the training. And it is, to this day, still the gold stamp HR bypass on your resume. They have done a lot to improve the content and the training, and competition's a great thing between us, honestly, and through eLearn Security, which is now INE. That forced change in the industry. And again, there's a lot more vendors nowadays than there were before. OSCP still holds true through the old guard that this is the certification you have to have in order to get a job in the field. And that may be true in some instances. It is a net positive to have on your resume. If you're going to get it, absolutely, it's positive. Can you afford it is the other question. When I went through it, it was around $800. Now it's around $1,600, and the price is always increasing. If you cannot afford it, that makes it very difficult, right? And it's one of those things where the training is still not that practical. It still follows like a CTF style exam, which is capture the flag. And so like on the job training, does it get you there? Not really. If you have the money, if I was going back and I had the money or somebody pay for it, absolutely, I'm going through it. Don't get me wrong. Okay, there are other training alternatives out there. Ours, the PMPT or the PJPT combined with that, you can get the PMPT for $400. You can get the 0-point security CRTO for $400. You can get the CRTP from Altered Security for $400. That is $1,200 for 3 certifications that's going to teach you more than the OSCP ever will. But the OSCP is the golden ticket still. So you need to weigh that and evaluate that yourself. There are plenty of people nowadays that are going through with 1 certification or 2 certifications and no OSCP and doing fine. However, if you have the money, you've got the time and the resources, by all means. If somebody's going to pay for it, by all means. Don't get me wrong, it is still better to have on your resume than not. But if you cannot afford it, do not feel bad about it because there are other training resources out there that are far more practical and are going to teach you way more when it comes to on-the-job knowledge, and you're going to crush interviews with those. A lot of people go and get the OSCP to be able to have that name on the resume, but then go get additional training to actually be able to talk the talk when it comes to the interview and working in the field. So keep that in mind. When it comes to the OSWP, do not recommend. I don't know if they've made updates to it since I went through it, but when I went through it, it was 90% WEP, which is a very old wireless protocol. If I was going to see training nowadays around wireless and I want to see an exam related to it, I want to see WPA2, I want to see Bluetooth, I want to see newer technologies that are involved in learning how to actually attack those, especially like enterprise technologies. The training around that was not good. The exam was not great. I just didn't really enjoy it. It left a bad taste in my mouth for that. So in terms of other like training and certifications, there's tons and tons and tons of resources out there. Again, the blog that I'll link below has a bunch of that and a bunch of resources, including where to learn from this. And it doesn't have to be a cent paid. There's like literally free resources in there. So keep that in mind. There are really affordable platforms like our own, like places like TryHackMe, other things where you don't have to spend a ton of money in order to break into the field. And again, there's YouTube if you want to curate your own content. So just do your own research. And so that is the path that I would take. If I did it over again, definitely A+, Net Plus, Security Plus. I don't think I would do the CCNA. The CCNA is okay. Like it helped me. I think it was beneficial to the job that I was in, but it really wasn't all that great in terms of like, I need this for long-term knowledge, because at the end of the day, it is a Cisco exam. So it's a vendor specific exam. Ideally, you want to have a vendor neutral exam. So Net Plus was okay. If you want to supplement that a little bit, I think that's fine. OSCP, if I had the money or somebody's paying for it, again, alternate resources out there. PMPT, which full disclosure is ours. The CRTO, CRTP, I think are great. And then do your due diligence. When you go out there, look within the last year. Go out there and look on Google, look on Reddit, look in different places. What are the training providers that I should look at? What are the paths that I should go down? I would honestly say avoid people that have been in the industry for 10 plus years, because you see a lot of that get off my lawn mentality. Because especially back in the day, 10 plus years ago, the cybersecurity field and especially the ethical hacking field were not all that welcoming. And so they were very much, you have to have this certification, you have to go this path that I took, or I'm not even considering you for an interview. A lot of those people now are being phased out of their jobs. Either they're moving somewhere else, the newer guard is coming in, and we're starting to see that newer mentality, that more welcoming and accessible mentality that just wasn't there in the industry previously. So I highly encourage you to go talk to somebody that's been in the field maybe just a year. How did you do it? What did you do? How did you get into this? What are the training resources that are out there? What can I do to improve? And so like when you're searching on Reddit or you're searching on Google, look for blogs or posts that were written in the last year or so. Do your research, do your due diligence. Don't just say, oh, well, Heath Adams said that he went through the A+, Net+, Security+, Linux+, whatever, and he was a help desk and a network engineer and all these things. So I'm going to do exactly that path, because my path is not your path, and your path should be unique to you and what you feel comfortable with learning and what you really excel at. So again, if you don't like programming, don't go study programming and become a computer science major because some guy on the internet told you to. Don't do that. Just make your path your path. Do your research, collect data from what is current and within the last year. Talk to people that have just gotten into the field in the last year or so and get information from them. Don't just trust this guy on YouTube. I'm an influencer overall, right? So what you need to do is do your own research. But if I could go back and do it again, this is the path I would take. For the most part, I would do a lot of the same things, but I would take some certifications out of it, some training out of it. And I am so happy that we live in an era now where there are training resources available for either free or affordable for people, because not everybody can get an employer to pay for it. Not everybody can pay for these things out of pocket. And so it is very nice to see a world that is moving towards accessibility and knowledge for everybody. And that is what we are after overall. So that is the spiel. That is my video for today, and hopefully you found it useful. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We are well on our way to 1 million. We're closer to 1 million than we are to 0, which is always cool. And until next time, my name is Heath Adams, aka the Cyber Mentor, and I do thank you for joining me. Peace out.